Hey everyone, and welcome to the Vega 64 and 56 review. Hey guys, and it's finally time for my Vega review. Yes, I am a bit late and I do apologise. I have explained in another video if you want to go and see a little vloggy thing about what's been going on. But what did happen last week when I was just finishing my Vega 64 testing was I had the Vega 56 turn up. So what I've done is I've just done 2 in 1 to try and save us some time so that we can kind of catch up a little bit. So the good thing about having the 56 and the 64 is I have really optically the difference between the limited edition 64 and the normal 64, because this looks exactly like the 64 normal kind of run-of-the-mill black edition card. And if you have a look at it up close, I'm not going to go into this too much because otherwise I'll end up spending loads of time on it. So we'll do it really quickly here. You can see all the dimples on the top. 2 8-pin connectors here. The light is slightly different to the limited edition one because the limited edition light is in a slightly different place. And you can see that we've got the gloss black shroud kind of thing going on in that one. Whereas with the limited edition one, it's more kind of, I want to say like cinema effect. Remember the old school cinema signs? It looks a bit more like that to me. And it's a lot more plasticky than the limited edition one, which is all milled aluminium, and it looks lush. Do you know what I mean? With that extra backplate and everything on it, it's a lot more premium. But this one's a lot more plastic. But this also is much more like the 480, which if I put them together, you can see that they are very similar. The top one is the 480. You can see where all the design cues come from. It does make a lot of sense, and I like the fact we've got a bit of brand identity going on. So this would be what you would get if you bought a normal 56 or 64. This is the card that you'll get if you buy the limited edition 64. Now this does come with a much higher price tag, and really the limited edition side of it is about this silver shroud, the much sexier backplate. Obviously I've not had a 64 to test the difference between the two head to head. I don't think the shroud is going to make a great deal of difference, excuse me. And the only other thing really is you've got quite a funky cube thing in the corner which lights up red as well. And I have to admit, the actual aesthetics of this I find very pleasing personally, and it's taken a great deal of my self-restraint not to just paint this white, because obviously the red and white for me is just like a weak point. So I've been able to do you the 64 and the 56 in one review, and the difference between the two when we bring the graph up or the data up, essentially really the next gen compute units give away the names. You've got 64 and then 56. What that does mean is you've got 4,096 stream processors on the 64 and 3,584 on the 56. And then the clock speed, you've got 1274, 1156, and right down at the bottom you can see there's a 85 watt power difference between the two as well, which we'll get to in a moment. Now, I did say to you that I'd done balanced, turbo, and then a manual overclock. Now what you can do is go into AMD settings, then you hit global settings, and then you can go to global Wattman, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find there are some settings for manual fans and then the power limit. Really with the power limit, I just moved it out to the right, and it goes up to 50. I put it all the way up to 50. I said it was an unrestricted overclock. And the fans, I played around with the fan settings, but you've got 2 options, and one is the minimum fan speed, one is the maximum fan speed. The maximum fan speed I just moved to the top. I did play around with different fan speeds to see how low I could get it, but to be honest with you, once you get above the kind of 3,500 RPM mark and they go up above 4,000, it's not really a great deal of difference. The only reason why I did turn the fans right up is, as you'll see in a moment, what I did was an auto fan, so whether it could do the fan cooling itself run, and then I did some power testing and some boost testing, and then I also did it with a maximum fan, and especially on the 64 there was a difference keeping it cooler. So these are all points I'm going to try and clearly make to you. So when I bring the clock speed graph up, essentially the numbers kind of make sense for yourself, but what you can see is the difference between the auto fan and the 100% fan. Now with the 56, it didn't really make a great deal of difference in that it wasn't something I was particularly surprised about. It just didn't make a great deal of difference, but the 64, it made a big difference. Giving it the extra cooling allowed it to pull more power. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, there's no way turning the fans up made that much difference. That's not the difference that the fans have made. That was by adding in additional cooling. I'll stand off to the side, but adding in additional cooling, what then happened was it allowed the card to actually boost a bit better as well. So when you look at the 530 watt, it's 1578 megahertz. By turning the fans up to full chat, and that was the only change that we made, it then boosted up to 1617.3. Now that's the closest we got to the boost clock, or the rated clock that they're saying is 1630 megahertz. Now, something I do want to explain to you about that 1630 megahertz is a bit of a hallowed kind of halo ring, because that is literally, it's the clock that they set, but it's not necessarily a clock that they're ever really going to ever get to. Because the clocks change so much, there are like P states with the Ryzen CPUs, in that the clock speed will change all the time. You will very rarely ever get to see even a peak go to 1630 megahertz. We were watching min, max and average in our testing, and the actual 1630 megahertz was hit on so few occasions it was almost a bit pointless even measuring it. But the problem is you know, with a maximum, you always do get there. Really, the kind of consistent high point without the spikes would have been about 1620. So it's a bit of a confusing the way AMD do this. I mean, and when you think about it, I mean, the architectures between the reds and the greens is very different anyway. But AMD kind of put this ceiling thing in because it can hit it like once a game, or like every 10 minutes or something on a really low setting, and it will boost up that high. With the green team, what they're essentially doing is they say it's kind of like 1600 megahertz, and then their software or their firmware then overclocks it secretly in the background. And with these, it's kind of the opposite. So one thing that this does tell us is that with the 56, the power and adding loads of extra cooling in didn't really get us anywhere. With this 64, that extra cooling definitely did make a massive difference. So this does then open us up to talking about, they are going to be doing AIO cooled versions. Definitely going to be something that, you know, is going to do well on this card. But it also does, and this is the reason why I made it, is it does also then open us up to talking about aftermarket water cooling blocks, water cooling the cards. Because obviously if you go down that route, not only are you going to be cooling all the power regs and everything like that, but dropping those temperatures down could, with the power limit increase, which you would have to do manually, it would mean that you could easily get a lot more performance out of the cards. The problem is when you do that, as I've said to you, it makes a big difference with the wattage and the power draw. So when I bring up the power draw graph, it's quite striking the difference that adding that overclock in. And like I said before, people are saying to me, oh, but Tom, do you know what I mean? There's no way. We've run that test several times because we thought it was a big jump as well. But it consistently did it. If I'm honest with you, In the full overclock mode, we use Unigine to do that test because it obviously loops and loops and loops and loops and loops. If we were to then chuck 3D Mark Firestrike Ultimate on it with a loop, or even some games like Deus Ex on a loop, the power draw was higher. At certain, obviously the reason why we've got our graph and we have to test them all the same way is they're all comparable. But with Deus Ex, on a loop with a game, we were getting the system draw close to 700 watts with the manual fans and the overclock in play. I mean, 700 watts, yes, that's from the wall, but you put that, you know, it's a huge, huge number, massive, massive power draw. It kind of does everything that I've been saying about not needing massive power supplies for quite a while. But then again, the X299 chips kind of did that as well. But anyway, so the power draw is there. Temperatures, to be honest with you, the temperatures, when we talk about temperatures, what you do need to remember is the thermal target for the 64 is 85 degrees anyway. So all it does is it speeds the fans up once it starts to get to that limit. It's exactly the same as the way the green team do theirs, because when you think about the fact that like the NVIDIAs, they go to 85 degrees, and then you'll either get a quiet fan or a loud fan depending on how high the ambient temperature of your room is. These are very similar, apart from the 56 is a lot cooler. It only really gets up to that 84 degree-ness when you really wang the fan up. And by wang the fan up, I mean genuinely spank that fan up there. It fell over. Do you know what? I'm not going to make a clickbaity title about it. Anyway, so when we move on to 3D Mark, one of the things that you do need to keep in mind here is we've got all of the results in there for you to have a good old ganders at. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the 1080, and what you do need to look at with this is we've obviously reviewed a lot of different cards. So we've got some aftermarket cards in here, but we do have the generic ones in there as well, just the plain NVIDIA titled ones. And what you can see in this is the plain NVIDIA 1080 is actually right in between all of the 64s and all of the 56s. The other thing that I do need to kind of mention is we don't necessarily go back and retest every single one of these results. So the NVIDIA result is from when we first reviewed it right the way back. Because to be honest with you, if I had have gone and retested them all, it would have taken me another 2 weeks. And if I'm honest, the graphs would probably have been a bit different. But the thing is I don't go back and retest, and I try not to. I've only ever done it with the Ryzen stuff, because at the end of the day, it's we try to do them with the launch results. Otherwise, you end up having to retest so many times with each driver change and each this and each that, and this is patched, so you just end up chasing your tail forever. So the best thing that you can think about is the most recent 1080 comparison. But anyway, it's schematics. At the end of the day, it's never going to make a massive difference. I'm just being totally honest and open with you about it. But the 64 did do quite well in 3D Mark with this. And considering, like I said, the other thing that you need to think about is these are launch drivers and stuff as well. So it is quite fair, and it is quite a meaty thing to grab hold of. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, you should have retested this and you should have retested that. Well, with all due respect, for me to do one run on this takes me about 6 hours. And I have done 3 runs on each card, as well as multiple thermal tests, and one of the thermal tests takes me at least 45 minutes because of the warm up and the cool down. So there's a lot of testing that goes into this, so we can't keep going. Anyway, totally digressed. So that is that. Did very well against the 1080 in this one. When we go to this one as well, remember you can pause, but first thing that I would say to do is when you do pause, look for the 1080 and then look at the results that are around it, because again, it's only really the well, you've even got the 56 beating the 1080 in Warhammer, but Warhammer is a very AMD biased game, but it's not the matter. It's still a game that you could be buying. If you're buying a graphics card for Warhammer, or this is the game that you live on, then this is going to be a really, really interesting graph for you. 1070 is quite further down, but the other thing to kind of look at with this is the turbo result didn't do that well because of the 1440p result. And that was another one with this game that we found quite weird. So we ended up running this result specifically 5 times, and this was the best of the 5. Don't know what it is. Warhammer 1440p seemed a bit skew-if in turbo mode with the 64. It's probably some weird glitch they'll fix in a driver. Gears of War 4, when we move on to that, things get a little bit more where we would plan on them being, or where we were expecting them to be in relation to the 1080. The turbo and the overclock just picked the 1080, but the balance result was below the 1080. With the 56s, they were all bunched together, but they were all bunched together above the 1070 founders. Ghost Recon Wildlands, this is the first one that we're going to be showing you where the 1080, even though it was the original test that we did on it, was above. And really what you did end up getting was the 1070, a block of 56s, and then a block of 64s, and then the 1080. It was quite well split. Deus Ex, this was another game that the 64 did manage to beat the 1080 Founders Edition, and even the 56s were chomping at the bit really in front of it on a couple of those. So I have whizzed through those results for you really quickly, and a lot of the games do look fairly favourable. It's up to you to decide whether you think I should have gone back and retested the 1080 Founders Edition and retested the 1070 Founders Edition. But to be honest with you, it's not something that we, like I said, it's not something that we do very often. We prefer to do them at launch, and then we let the aftermarket cards do the talking after that point. It's exactly the same way I'm going to treat these. I will not retest these again, short of the fanboys giving me so much grief that they want these ones retesting again, because what we prefer to do is then let the Strix and the Gigabytes and the MSIs and everything that else comes afterwards, they will make the difference. But we do have to address something rather massive, and that is the elephant in the room, and that is AMD's launch tactics upon pricing. Because I can bring this up, and I've got it printed out for you. This was the price that I got sent with the Vega pack while I was on holiday, and then essentially they told us that the black standalone card, so the price they wanted us to base our reviews off of, was £449. And then this one that they did send me, they did say that what we want you to do is base it on 449, but this one is 549 because it's limited edition, and we sent that to you because we know you like limited edition stuff, but please, you know, it is the limited edition card, so they're both going to perform the same, and I'm basing this on if this was the silver 56 and this was a black 56. But anyway, so we had 449 and then 549, and then you add the 64 liquid pack, which was 639. But there was a problem. And this was all taken from the Overclockers UK, so that's an e-tailer in the UK, OC UK. It was all put on their forums by Gibbo, and Gibbo is their purchasing manager. So Gibbo is not going to be someone, apart from when it comes to hash rates, that is likely to be telling marginal porkies. The hash rate stuff that he did put on the forums was obviously well off. But the pricing and everything, because we basically, what happened is they all went out at 449 quid. Within 10 minutes, the prices of 549 quid. And what had happened is AMD were doing a £100 rebate per card based on a limited number of cards. Now, overclockers won't tell me the exact number of cards. I have been able to work out by talking to some of the other people that work in it, was somewhere between 250 and 300 cards. So what happened is, though that amount of cards were £449, that was paid for by AMD. They gave OC UK £100 for every single one of those graphics cards sold to keep the price down. So that's your launch price. But that was also that was all of the information that I got told was 449. I was not told it was a limited launch price. I was not told it was a rebate price. There was none of that relayed to the media whatsoever. So really, what we end up getting is a 56 in black, sorry, a 64 in black that you can get with 2 games of £549. Then you also get a silver card that you can get for £549 on its own, and you pay that little bit extra. You don't get the games because it's silver. But the problem is, and I genuinely do mean the problem is the way they were all really secretive and shady about it. And my other really big issue is when you compare the market with the meerkats, go on to overclockers. If you have a look at the price of these, and then you have a look at the price of 1070s and 1080s, and think about like the performance, they are relatively similar. Yes, some pull ahead in some points, some pull ahead in others, but in the grand scheme of things, if you look at the frames per second, there's not a great deal between them. The fact that, and this is the big one, and I'm not sure anyone's really thought about this yet, those prices for these 549, if you go and have a look, they're normally around the 575, 599 mark for one of these, and one of the 64s in black, you can get one for 548. The problem is you can go and get a 1080 for less than one of these, but it's an aftermarket 1080. You can actually get the Gigabyte 1080 with their nice Windforce cooler thing, the 3-fan one, for less than £550. And we're also being told that the 56 is, the best they've given me so far, is about £400. But with the about £400, you can get a 1070 for £349. Again, on overclockers, on the day that I'm making this review. So when we balance it all up with the pricing, I mean, the water-cooled one of these, if you really wanted to get one of those, they're looking at, you're looking at 675 up to the £700 mark. You can actually get a 1080 Ti for that sort of money. Now, don't go thinking I'm telling you all these things because I'm an NVIDIA fanboy and I've been paid off. I'm genuinely not. I wish I was in some respects, because then you guys would have something to moan about, but I'm just trying to keep it real. I do think that if I was reviewing them at 449, we would be having a totally different conversation. Genuinely do think it would be totally different. 549, they are kind of losing the edge. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be going on at me about, because I actually wrote some notes down because I knew you'd want to talk about like the iChill and the high bandwidth controller, and the fact that they're doing this math thing. Well, AMD have got the tendency of kind of saying to us, oh, we've got all these new technologies, but we have to wait for the developers to do it. Now, the developers don't just do it. They don't. They get paid to do it. They sit back and they wait for someone to pay them to do it. I'd love to know how much Far Cry 5 has been paid to implement all this stuff, but we'll see how much of a difference it makes. But the problem is you can't base the purchase of a graphics card based on, some of this stuff is going to get included into some games later. Again, we're talking about NVIDIA, but if we were talking about NVIDIA did a thing recently where they'd learned, or they'd worked out a way to compress all of the data in a totally different way so that you didn't need a massive memory bus. So it looked like they'd reduced the memory bus, but the performance was actually as good as this bigger one, or if not better. Now, this didn't need any coding by any of the developers whatsoever, and that's normally the way it happens with NVIDIA. I'm sure when they release the next one that they're going to shoot me in the foot, but normally when stuff like that happens, it doesn't, a lot of the time it just works, is the point that I'm trying to make. Whereas AMD as a whole always seem to be, yeah, but in a bit, and always the arguments in the comments is optimizations, and in Ryzen, for example, optimizations, the only optimizations that happened, in my opinion, were the ones that should have happened before they launched it, and it was all really down to memory optimizations and stuff like that. There has been nothing other than BIOS and a geese of codes to get memory working and memory working properly. As far as like program optimizations for the way the cores work and stuff, still waiting. It hasn't happened. And it's always a worry with me with the way that these go. Now, negative point, they use too much power. For the love of God, without water cooling, do not turn that power dial up too far. You will get to a point, a tipping point, where you'll be moving the power dial more than the performance that you're going to be getting. So it's going to be a bit of a balancing act. One thing that, I mean, these are reference cards. We kind of almost discount these now because you buy these and you slap a water block on them, or you bodge an AIO cooler onto them with like the NZXT bracket or something like that. So we're going to be waiting on the aftermarket cards. But one of the things I wanted to show you, where I did all those thermal tests with the wattages and stuff, is the difference between the aftermarket cards is going to be, one, first and foremost, how good the cooler is, because they get stupid hot. Two, is going to be how freely they turn the power requirement up. You know, the little power slider thing where they can set that in the BIOS. I've already been hearing some stuff from Asus. It's like there's going to be a 20 watt on balance and maybe 40 watt on the turbo difference. Now, literally, how much they turn that power thing up is how much better the card will perform. As long as the cooling side of things can keep the temperature down enough, then if they can keep the temperature down, then turning that power thing up, everything will fall into place. So the ideal thing really for these cards is cold temps like water cooling, lots and lots of power, forget about your electricity bill, and that's the best way that you're going to get performance out of them. But like I said, there's going to be that tipping point where the power is only going to get you so far before you really start having to push it up to just get another half a frame a second, and that's all going to be the way that you guys end up balancing it out at home. So I think the performance of a reference 64 at £549 minimum kind of kills it off. If it was £449 like it was, we'd be having a totally different story. It would come in under loads of the 1080s, if not all of the 1080s, and you could kind of say the heat and the power was was enough. Do you know what I mean? And you could kind of get by it because you'd saved your money, which is normally where we expect AMD to go. The 56 really is the one that I'm most interested in. Now, I'm reviewing this before we've got a concrete price. AMD gave me about 400 quid. If it comes in about 400 quid, then I think this one could be worth a punt. But something else that I've been thinking about is I genuinely think that these are overpriced because the yields they are struggling with, because these are the same cards underneath basically, they're just speed binned, and I think they're struggling to get all of the processing units and the clock speed out of these, and the ones that are substandard turn into these. So if these are much cheaper and these sell better, it means you're not going to need so many of these, so it hopefully balances everything out. So I genuinely think they're having yield issues getting enough of the 64s, and I dread to think what's going to happen when these start going out to the end vendors and stuff like that. But one of the things that has played into their hands is they're likely to blame it on miners. But as we've seen already, lots of people thought that the £100 price increase was miners, and AMD kept really quiet about it. We've not had any properly official statements yet. All they've said is they're going to hopefully have some individual cards back in stock. They've not said how much they're going to be. So I think miners are going to get blamed for a lot, but I think this is all down to yields. This being the price that it is, and not being funny, the performance difference isn't massive in certain areas. I think this is going to be the one to go for. But there is something else that I'm quite worried about, and it's something that I don't know whether you've really picked up on this. If, and this is a big if, the 64. We don't know if they release a black one again. We don't know whether it'll ever be 449. I don't think it ever will be. I think we might get AMD kind of stick their tail between their legs when everyone's kicked off a little bit more. You might get one that ends up coming in around 499. But what you need to remember is this is a reference card. All, and I do mean all, of the third-party cards will end up costing more. Okay? So this is pure speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see third-party cards of the 64 being 649. And that then puts us in a horrifically difficult position, in that then puts an aftermarket one of these in exactly the same sort of territory as a 1080 Ti. It will completely surpass any 1080 prices. So if the third party cards go over, and I think they will go well over that £600 price mark, you've then taken them completely out of the 1080 territory, and you're yomping off into 1080 Ti territory. And it's, even in a deafening overclocked state, it's no match for the 1080 Ti. So there is a lot of information, there is a lot of speculation as well, but really, and I do genuinely mean really, we need AMD to come back to the table now, and we need to know for the price of the black one, so not this limited edition one, we need to know a price of the black 64. Because when we know what that price is actually going to be, because at the moment it looks like they're going to be 550, if you then take that as a baseline, and then everything else is going to be north of that point, it's not too much of a take to think that some people are going to be charging 599, 649 for an aftermarket card. But also, really, with all due respect, AMD not telling anyone about that rebate and being very clear about it, and it was a limited launch price. I don't care whether I lose loads of subscribers about this. That stinks, because what that basically means is if you didn't have the money to go and get one within the first 10 minutes, and I'm not even being funny, there was overclockers and Scan that were offered the rebate. Scan didn't even run any of it, they just put the full price up. Overclockers run this and got flack, including from us, because it was the way it looked. We ran an article giving OC UK crap for putting the price up by £100 within 10 minutes. So, you know, I apologise on behalf of OC3D for that, because we didn't know the full details, but they did come to us and tell us, and we did change the article. But I'm just being, again, I'm being open at you about it. But 549 as a base price, I think it's too much. And if I'm honest, if I'm totally honest, 549 as a base price might have been acceptable 2 years ago, because if I'm honest with you, with that power draw and the numbers that we were getting, it did feel like I should have been reviewing this card in 2015. Yeah, maybe the beginning of 2016. But I think this is 2 years too late. And to be churning out that kind of power draw in this day and age, with what the competition is absolutely just, you know, dithering with, essentially what's happened is this has come out, and now we've got to wait until at least next March for the next lot from the green team, because they're just like, pfft. It's all a bit dodge. So what we really need, or what we really needed, was a card to come in and shake up the market. And this is really, it's fallen so short of it. It's a bit disappointing. So for me, the 56, it's definitely got you, if I'm honest about it, as far as the 1070 as a comparison is concerned, I like this card. I hope the vendor cards come out and their prices aren't too much higher, because that's going to be critical when choosing against a 1070. But it does, in most scenarios, perform a bit better than a 1070. So I like this. I like the way that the price point has come in on this one. And like I said, as long as the vendor prices don't go up too much, this one is going to be the one worth buying. This one with the shady tactics that went in right at the start, because let's face it, if the reviewers reviewed it at £449, they didn't know that the price was only going to be on a few hundred cards. Otherwise they would have reviewed it at £549, because that's where the prices are going to be. This is totally shady, and I genuinely, it's got a Case Labs copycat company kind of dodgy tactics just written all over it. You can read between the lines between that one. I'm not going to slander myself. You'll know what I mean. The people that know will know. And it's got that kind of horrible taste in my mouth. So whoever decided to keep that secret and to tell everyone that the base price was $449, whoever decided that, he needs sacking. Chuff that bloke out the door, because he hasn't got a clue. What we now need is for AMD to give us a £449 card for the masses. I don't care if, and this is the other thing really, when I say that out loud, it's just dawned on me, AMD told me about £400 for the 56. That was, I could quote the conversation, about £400 for the 56. Yet they were telling us a week ago that was going to be $450. I'd like to think we'd get a £450 card again. Don't think we're going to when you think about it. If the 56 is 400, this is going to stay 550 quid, isn't it? Doesn't matter how much we cry, how much we jump up and down, how much I waste your time yabbering on about it. This is a bit of a cluster bleep. And yeah, I've got to admit it, this one, no. Genuinely not. Too much heat, too much power, not really enough going on for it. And the worst bit about it is we know that the aftermarket cards, which are going to be the ones you need to buy to live with, are going to end up costing too much money. So we will see. Maybe I've just shot myself in the foot for loads of other ones, but the 64, I don't know. You would literally, if you were going to buy the 64, I think my feeling of it would be, because of the power, because of the heat, because of how much it costs, and the fact that you can get the 1080 cheaper, I genuinely think that the way you would end up swinging with it is you would have to go and buy AMD, because you just didn't want an NVIDIA card anymore. You were literally doing it to kind of kick the norm. And I think for this to have come out and be performing like this so late in the day, we needed this to absolutely bat out of the park. And that's even though we did get some relatively decent results in regards to a vanilla 1080. You need to remember that with the other aftermarket cards, the Matrixes and the Strixes and all that type of stuff, they all had bigger overclocks and all of that sort of stuff, and they did really well. So yeah, I'm going to leave that there. It's totally up to you to let me know what you think. I would love to see you discuss it underneath. There's no need for hatred or fanboyness or anything like that. I will discuss your points with you and I will take them all on board. We will also have a really meaty discussion about all my points on the OC3D forums. If you would like to come and join in with that, please feel free. If you don't get your activation email through from the website when you try and join the forums, if you go down the bottom, there is a contact us thing that comes directly through to me. I will manually add you myself to make sure that you get onto the forums. So yeah, would love to know your thoughts. Boiling points, too hot, too much power, 2 years too late. Definitely now too expensive, and to be honest with you, the shady tactics about the £449 price, I genuinely do not agree with, and it to the point I'm disappointed in the way AMD went about it. I thought they were better than that. It kind of goes back to the days of the 8350 and putting them up for pre-order weeks before reviews went live, because they knew once the reviews went live, people probably wouldn't have bothered buying them. And on that point,